if Mel Gibson didn't discover hidden Ethiopian texts, then what exactly did he use to create one of the most disturbing, realistic, and emotionally overwhelming portrayals of Jesus ever put on screen? Because the answer is not what most people think. It wasn't archaeology. It wasn't a lost Bible. It wasn't some secret manuscript hidden in Africa. It was something far more controversial. Don't blink, because something happened in America. Not in a church, not in a sermon, not in a theology class, but in a movie theater. Lights go dark, the screen turns on, and for the next 2 hours, millions of people sit in silence, watching a man suffer. Not symbolically, not poetically, but brutally. They watch the whipping, they hear the screams, they feel the weight of every blow. And by the time it ends, something changes, not just emotionally, but mentally. Because people didn't walk out saying, "That was a movie." They walked out saying, "That's what happened." And that belief didn't stay in the theater. It followed them home, into conversations, into churches, into sermons, into how people picture Jesus forever. Because once you see something that vividly, your brain stops questioning it. It accepts it, locks it in, and replaces imagination with memory. So over time, something subtle happened across the United States. The line between scripture and cinema started to blur, and most people didn't even notice it happening. But then, the rumors started, quiet at first, almost like whispers. This wasn't just a movie. Mel Gibson found something. There were hidden texts, ancient Ethiopian records, lost biblical details nobody talks about. And suddenly, the film wasn't just powerful, it was mysterious. 'Cause think about it. Some of the scenes in The Passion of the Christ feel too detailed, too specific, too intense, to just be imagination. The number of strikes, the way the soldiers behaved, the emotional reactions of the crowd, the pacing of the suffering. It doesn't feel vague. It feels witnessed. And that's where the idea started to spread. Maybe this came from somewhere. Maybe this wasn't just interpretation. Maybe this was discovered. And once that idea enters your mind, it changes everything. Because now you're not just watching a film. You're watching what you believe is history. But here's the problem. Silence. None of that is true. No hidden Ethiopian manuscripts. No lost biblical scrolls. No secret discovery that changed everything. That story was created after the film, not before it. So now we're left with a question, and it's not a small one. Because if Mel Gibson didn't uncover hidden texts, if he didn't discover lost history, if he didn't find secret biblical details, then where did all of this come from? Because here's the part most people never stop to examine. Some of the most unforgettable, most disturbing, most talked about moments in that film are not found in the Bible, not described, not detailed, not recorded that way. And yet, they're the scenes people remember the most. So what you're about to see next is not just a breakdown of a film, it's an investigation into what was real, what was added, and what millions of people now believe without ever questioning it. Because the truth behind this story is not hidden, it's just misunderstood. Tonight, we're going to break down what Mel Gibson actually used and why the truth behind it is far more controversial than the myth. You might not see this channel again, so do well to subscribe. Turn on post notifications and share this video to your families or friends so they learn from this video. Are you in the United States like myself? Or somewhere else around the world? Let me know in the comments section below. When the film was released in 2004, everything changed, because this wasn't just another release on a Friday night. It wasn't something people casually decided to watch. It wasn't, let's go see a movie. It was, we need to experience this. Across the United States, something unusual started happening. Churches didn't just recommend the film, they organized it. Entire congregations booked theaters in advance, group tickets, buses arranged, announcements made from pulpits. Families didn't just go, they prepared, like they were about to witness something sacred. But what they didn't realize was this: they were walking into something far more intense than they expected. Picture this: a packed theater, no talking, no popcorn noise, no casual laughter, just silence. The lights dim, the screen fades in, and within minutes, the tone is clear. This is not going to be easy to watch, because right from the beginning, there's no emotional distance, no soft introduction, no gentle storytelling. It pulls you in immediately, and once it does, it doesn't let go. As the film progresses, the atmosphere in theaters across America started to change. People weren't just watching, they were reacting physically. Some leaned forward, unable to look away. Others leaned back, trying to create distance from what they were seeing. And then it started happening. People cried, not quietly. Deep emotional reactions. Some covered their eyes, some turned their heads, some couldn't handle it, and walked out. Not because the film was bad, but because it was too much. And for those who stayed, the ending didn't bring relief, it brought silence. The kind of silence where no one stands up immediately, no one speaks, no one checks their phone, because everyone is processing what they just experienced. And that's when something unusual happened. People didn't leave saying, "That was well directed. That was a good performance. That was a powerful film." They left saying, "I didn't know it was like that. I never imagined it that way." That's what Jesus went through. Do you see the shift? Not interpretation, but acceptance. Because this film did something most movies never achieve. It didn't just tell a story. It replaced the version of the story people had in their minds. Before this film, most Americans pictured the crucifixion differently. Less detailed, less graphic, more distant. Something you read about, but didn't fully visualize. But after this film, that changed. Now, when people thought about Jesus' suffering, they didn't imagine. They remembered, even if they had never seen it before. In America, this film didn't just stay in theaters. It moved into conversations. Pastors referenced it in sermons. Families talked about it at dinner tables. Friends debated it at work. And for many, it became the default mental image of the crucifixion, not because they studied it, but because they experienced it. And that's powerful, because once an image becomes your reference point, it's very hard to replace. Now think about this. The Passion of the Christ grossed over $600 million worldwide, without traditional Hollywood marketing, without the usual industry support. That alone tells you something. This wasn't driven by hype. It was driven by word of mouth, emotion, and impact. People weren't saying, "You should watch this." They were saying, You need to see this. But here's the uncomfortable part. In all of that emotion, all of that reaction, all of that cultural impact, almost nobody stopped to ask one critical question. Why did it feel so real? Not just emotional, not just powerful, real. Because realism doesn't come from intensity alone. It comes from detail, specificity, consistency. And that's where things start to get interesting. Because when you look closely, some of the details that made this film feel so real don't actually come from the Bible. And once you realize that, another question begins to form. If it didn't come from Scripture, then where did it come from? So now we're left with a question, not emotional, not cinematic, historical. Because if the film felt real, if the details felt specific, if the suffering felt witnessed, then that level of realism had to come from somewhere. But here's what makes this uncomfortable. The answer is not found in archaeology, not in Ethiopia, not in hidden scrolls buried in the ground. It's found in a person, not a historian, not a scholar, not a filmmaker, a woman most people in America have never heard of. Her name was Anne Catherine Emmerich, a 19th century nun, born in Germany, long before modern cinema, long before Hollywood, long before anyone imagined recreating the crucifixion on screen. And her life was not extraordinary in the way you might expect. She wasn't famous. She didn't travel the world. She didn't uncover ancient artifacts. In fact, most of her life was spent in one place, a bed, because she was often sick, weak, confined, invisible to the world, the kind of person history usually forgets. But then something happened. She began reporting experiences that were impossible to verify, not dreams, not imagination, at least not in the way she described them. Visions, and not just any visions. She claimed she could see scenes from the life of Jesus, not as stories. She says if she was there, watching. She described the crucifixion, but not in broad terms, not in short sentences, not in symbolic language, in detail, the kind of detail that makes people uncomfortable. She described the exact nature of the torture, the repeated blows, the exhaustion of the body, the reactions of the crowd, the behavior of the soldiers. And here's where it gets even more intense. She didn't just describe what happened. She described how it felt, the pain, the weight, the emotional atmosphere surrounding it. Almost like she wasn't recalling something, she was witnessing it. This is where two very different reactions begin to form. For some people, this sounds spiritual, divine, meaningful. For others, it sounds impossible, unverifiable, even dangerous. And that tension is exactly where this story lives. Because her visions didn't stay private, a writer named Clemens Brentano visited her. He listened, he documented, he wrote down what she described, and over time, those writings were compiled into detailed accounts of Jesus' life and suffering, not scripture, but something else, interpretation, experience, vision. Now fast forward, more than a century later, a filmmaker begins working on a project that would become the Passion of the Christ. And as he develops the scenes, as he builds the narrative, as he tries to answer one question, how do I make this feel real? He doesn't just turn to the Bible, he turns to her. And this is where everything changes, because many of the most intense, most unforgettable, most talked about moments in that film align closely with the visions of Anne Catherine Emmerich, not word for word, but in tone, in detail, in emotional depth. So now think about what that means. Scenes that millions of Americans watched, scenes that felt historically accurate, scenes that reshaped how people imagine the crucifixion, may not come directly from the Bible, but from the reported visions of a woman who lived centuries later. And that realization creates a tension you can't ignore, because now the question is no longer, was the film powerful? It clearly was. The question becomes, what exactly made it feel so real? Scripture? Filmmaking? Or something else entirely? Because once you step into that question, you're forced to confront something deeper, the difference between what is written and what is added. And that's where the real conflict begins. So now we've reached a moment where things stop being comfortable. Because up until now, this has felt like a discovery, a behind-the-scenes look, an explanation. But now, it becomes a decision. Because what we're about to compare is not just information, it's authority. Let's start with what most people trust, the Bible. For millions of Americans, this is not just a book, it's the foundation, the final authority, the reference point, or the standard. And when it describes the crucifixion, something interesting happens. It doesn't go into extreme detail. It doesn't describe every strike, every wound, every drop of blood. Instead, it uses language that is surprisingly restrained, simple, direct, almost minimal. For example, and they crucified him. That's it. No extended breakdown, no graphic explanation, no step-by-step account, just a statement. And for many people, that simplicity carries weight because it suggests something intentional, that the focus wasn't on the brutality, but on the meaning. But then, there's the other side, the one most people didn't grow up studying, didn't hear in sermons, didn't memorize in Sunday school. The visions of Anne Catherine Emmerich and her descriptions are the complete opposite. So where scripture is brief, she is detailed. Where scripture is restrained, she is graphic. Where scripture leaves space, she fills it. She describes extended suffering, not just the act of crucifixion, but everything leading up to it. Repeated torture, not just one moment of pain, but waves of it. Graphic physical damage, the kind of detail that forces you to imagine it, to see it, to feel it. And that's the key difference, because scripture tells you what happened, but her visions make you experience it. And this is where everything changes, because now, you're not just learning information, you're choosing which version shapes your understanding, and most people don't even realize they've made that choice. So now let's ask the question, not academically, not theologically, personally. When you picture the crucifixion, what do you see? Do you see a simple statement, "And they crucified him," or do you see the extended suffering, the repeated blows, the detailed brutality? Because one of those likely came from the Bible, and the other likely came from something else. And here's where it gets even deeper, because the human brain has a bias, a powerful one. The more detailed something is, the more real it feels, even if it's not verified, even if it's not original, even if it was added later. Detail creates certainty. Specificity creates belief. Emotion creates memory. So when you combine graphic detail, emotional intensity, visual storytelling. You don't just understand something, you internalize it. And that's what makes this so powerful, because for millions of people, the version of the crucifixion they carry in their minds today is not just scripture. It's a combination of what was written and what was added. So now we come back to the question, and this time, there's no avoiding it. Which one should you trust? Scripture or visions? Because the answer you choose doesn't just affect how you see a film, it affects how you understand the story itself. And once you ask that question, another one follows immediately. Which parts of the film came from where? Because when you start separating the two, you begin to see the film differently, and that's where things get even more revealing. Let's slow this down for a second. Because before we go any further, I want you to do something simple. Think back, not to what you've read, not to what you've been told, but to what you remember seeing, the scenes that stayed with you, the ones that didn't fade, the ones that felt almost impossible to forget, the whipping, the blood, the prolonged suffering, not just moments, images, the kind your mind replays even years later. And if you've ever seen The Passion of the Christ, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Because those scenes didn't just shock people, they imprinted. They became the reference point. So now, when many people in America think about the crucifixion, they don't imagine it from scratch. They recall those visuals, the pacing, the intensity, the physical damage. And over time, something subtle happens. Memory replaces text, not intentionally, not consciously, but naturally, because the brain prefers images over words. But here's where things take a turn. Some of those moments, the ones that felt the most real, the most detailed, the most unforgettable, are not directly described in the Bible. That doesn't mean they're false, but it does mean something important. They were expanded. They were inspired. They were dramatized. Let's be clear. The Bible does confirm Jesus was beaten. Jesus was crucified. Jesus suffered. That's not the question. The question is how much detail is given and how much was added. Because when you read the actual text, you'll notice something. It doesn't walk you through every second. It doesn't describe the exact number of strikes. It doesn't narrate every movement. It doesn't paint a full cinematic picture. It leaves space. And that space is where interpretation enters. And this is where the connection becomes clear, because many of the graphic details people remember from the film align more closely with the visions of Anne Catherine Emmerich, not word for word, but in tone, in intensity, in emotional depth, the extended suffering, the repeated cycles of pain, the drawn-out brutality. These are elements that go beyond the brevity of Scripture, and once you see that, you can't unsee it. And yet, here's the part that catches almost everyone off guard. Those are the scenes people remember the most. Not the shorter descriptions, not the simpler moments, the most intense ones, the ones that feel the most detailed, the ones that feel the most real. And there's a reason for that, because the brain doesn't prioritize accuracy, it prioritizes impact. The more emotional something is, the more vivid it is, the more detailed it feels, the more it sticks. So when a film presents extended suffering, graphic imagery, emotional intensity, your brain doesn't ask, Is this directly from Scripture? It simply accepts this is what happened. And over time, that acceptance becomes memory, and that memory becomes belief, and that belief becomes your understanding of the story, even if parts of it came from somewhere else. So now when you think about those scenes, the whipping, the blood, the prolonged suffering, you're no longer just remembering a film. You're recognizing a mixture of what was written and what was added. And once you realize that, you start seeing the entire film differently. Because now the question isn't just what was shown. It becomes, why was it shown that way? And that leads directly into something deeper: influence, belief, and intention. So now we've seen the scenes, we've traced the details, we've separated what was written from what may have been added. But that leads us to something deeper. Because films don't create themselves, they reflect the perspective of the person behind them. And in this case, that person is Mel Gibson. Now here's something many people know, but don't fully think through. Mel Gibson is a traditional Catholic, and that matters. Not in a casual way, not in a background detail, in a foundational way, because your beliefs shape how you interpret stories, how you understand history, how you present truth. And when you're making a film about something as important as the crucifixion, those beliefs don't stay hidden. They show up. Now, let's slow this down, because when people hear Catholic tradition, they often simplify it. But it's more layered than that. Catholic tradition doesn't rely only on Scripture. It also includes the teachings passed down through generations, the writings of early church leaders, the experiences of recognized saints, and in some cases, mystical experiences. That includes visions. Experiences where individuals claim to have seen, or been shown, spiritual realities, not as imagination, but as revelation. And for many Catholics, these experiences are not automatically dismissed. They are examined, considered, sometimes even embraced as meaningful. So when a filmmaker like Mel Gibson approaches the crucifixion, he's not just pulling from the Bible alone. He's pulling from a broader framework, one that can include Scripture tradition, and yes, visions like those of Anne Catherine Emmerich. And when those elements come together, they create a version of the story that feels fuller, more detailed, more immersive, but also more interpretive. And this is where the tension begins. Because not all Christian groups approach this the same way, especially in the United States, where Christianity is not one single perspective, but many different denominations, different teachings, different ways of understanding authority. For many Protestants, the approach is different. Scripture alone, meaning the Bible is the final authority, not additional visions, not later experiences, not interpretations outside the text. And from that perspective, anything added beyond Scripture raises questions. So now think about what happens when a film like this enters that environment. A film that blends Scripture with tradition, with visions, and presents it as one seamless experience. To the viewer, it feels unified, but underneath, it's layered. And that layering creates tension, not just between ideas, but between believers. Some see the film and say, "This brought me closer to understanding Christ's suffering." Others say, "This goes beyond what Scripture actually says." And both reactions exist at the same time. And that's what makes this moment so important, because this isn't just about agreeing or disagreeing. It's about recognizing something deeper, that how a story is told is influenced by what the storyteller believes. And when that story reaches millions of people, those influences don't stay hidden. They shape perception. So now the question becomes, was it just belief that made this film feel so real? Or was there something else working beneath the surface? Because once you understand that, you start to see the film not just as a story, but as an experience that was carefully constructed. And that's where we go next. So far, we've talked about sources, we've talked about scripture, we've talked about visions, we've talked about belief. But now we need to shift perspective, because even if you remove all of that, even if you ignore the debates, even if you set aside where the details came from, there's still one question left. Why did it feel so real? Not just powerful, not just emotional, real. Because beyond the source, there's another reason this film hit so hard. Realism. Not accidental realism, designed realism. Carefully constructed, layer by layer, choice by choice. Let's start with the environment. This film wasn't shot on modern city streets. It wasn't surrounded by digital backdrops. It was filmed in Italy, in places that still carry the texture of the ancient world. Stone streets, rough terrain, buildings that feel untouched by time. Locations chosen not just for accuracy, but for atmosphere. Because when your surroundings look ancient, your brain stops questioning the setting. It accepts it. Now add another layer. Practical effects, not CGI, not clean digital recreations. Physical, tangible elements. The wounds, the blood, the physical damage. Everything designed to feel like it exists in the same space as the actors. Because when something looks physically present, your brain treats it as real, even if it's constructed. Now take it even further. The acting, not distant, not theatrical, physical, strained, exhausted. The kind of performance that doesn't feel like acting. It feels like endurance. And when an actor doesn't look like they're performing, you stop seeing a character. You start seeing a person. And this is where something subtle happens. While you're watching all of this, you're not analyzing it. You're not questioning it. You're experiencing it. And that experience overrides logic. Because the human brain doesn't separate two things very well: emotional realism and historical accuracy. If something feels real, your brain assumes it is real, not because you've verified it, but because you've felt it. And feeling is one of the strongest forms of belief. So when you combine authentic locations, physical effects, intense performances, emotional storytelling, you create something powerful, not just a film, an experience. And once someone experiences something that vividly, it becomes their reference point, their mental image, their version of the story. And that's the key, because the realism in this film doesn't come from a single source. It comes from belief interpretation, craft and psychology working together seamlessly. So now we arrive at the final question, not about the film, not about the scenes, about you. Because after everything we've uncovered, what do you actually believe now? So now, after everything we've seen, everything we've broken down, everything we've questioned, we arrive at a moment of clarity. Not loud, not dramatic, quiet. The kind of moment where the noise fades, and one question remains. So now we come back to the real question. Not the rumors, not the assumptions, not the theories people created after the fact. The real question: what did Mel Gibson actually use? Let's remove everything that sounds mysterious. No hidden texts, no lost discoveries, no secret manuscripts buried in distant lands, nothing that was suddenly uncovered and changed everything overnight. Because that version of the story is simpler than reality, and often, simpler stories spread faster. What he used was not one thing. It was a combination, layered, blended, interwoven, scripture, the foundation, the original account, the source that millions of Americans recognize as authoritative, tradition, interpretations developed over time, perspectives passed down, ways of understanding that go beyond the text itself, personal interpretation, the lens of the storyteller, the decisions about what to show, what to emphasize, what to make the audience feel. And then, one woman's visions, the reported experiences of Anne Catherine Emmerich, not as scripture, not as confirmed history, but as influence. And when you put all of that together, you don't just get a film, you get a constructed experience, something designed to feel complete, detailed, convincing, or even if every part of it doesn't come from the same source. And this is where the realization deepens, because the question is no longer just, what did he use? It becomes, what did I accept? What parts felt so real that I never questioned them? What details did I absorb without knowing where they came from? Because in the end, this isn't about proving the film right or wrong. It's about understanding something more subtle. That powerful stories are rarely built from one source. They're built from layers. And when those layers are combined well enough, they stop feeling like layers. They feel like truth. And once you understand that, you're no longer just watching the story. You're seeing how the story was shaped, and that changes everything. So no, he didn't uncover something hidden, but what he used instead might be even more powerful, because sometimes the most influential stories aren't the ones that were discovered. They're the ones that were believed. If this made you rethink what you thought you knew, don't ignore it, because the most believable stories aren't always the most accurate. Subscribe, because the next video on what Jesus did in hell for 3 days before resurrection might challenge something even deeper. Like, comment, and turn on post notifications so you can join in spreading the gospel. I will see you in the next video. Good night and God bless you.